Southwest Florida's newest game in town brings you all the NFL action that you're asking for. Lloyd and Kevin have all the news, updates, trades, and rumors from the NFL. Lloyd Vance's Insider Football on Sports Radio 102.9 The Game starts now.
Lloyd Vance's Insider Football is back on 102.9 The Game, the Coastal Sports Network. So glad that everybody could join us this evening. We have Angel Martinez on the screen right now. We're waiting on Kevin Midgette. I think he's having technical difficulties. He'll probably be joining in a minute. And we're going to go around the NFL Week 1. What a great week. I mean, I was so glad it was here. It was real games. It was not preseason. And we finally got to see all the people that have been sitting on the bench through all these preseason games. So, looks like Kevin has joined. We'll get him up on the screen in a second. Our insider guest at 8:15 will be Scott Kacsmar. And Scott is from 365scores.com. Very good writer. Another one of these guys into analytics. That's the big thing around the NFL. Everybody's got these analytics department. We talked to Mike Tanier a couple weeks ago, and Mike Tanier was telling us all about, the great work he was doing and the stuff he did in Football Outsiders in terms of analytics. And Scott Kacsmar will have some of this. And I'm sure, I must like snark because sometimes his Twitter feed is also a little snarky, and it's going to be fun to bring him on. So, Kevin, how you doing this evening? I'm glad you got everything working.
Yeah. Technology is a bugger sometimes. Glad to be here. Can't wait to talk about Week 1, see how much we knew and how much we didn't know, actually, to be honest, how some of these lower tier teams we thought actually showed up Week 1.
Yeah, Kevin, it's crazy because my Survivor Pool special, me and Nate both picked the same team to win, and we're both out because the Cincinnati Bengals did not show up. You're talking about upsets. It's like, what in the world is going on here? I'm watching the whole game, and I'm like, come on, Cincinnati, are you serious? Because we had talked all going into this week how the Patriots probably one of the worst teams in the league, but they put up a pretty good effort for Jerod Mayo. So, what did you see there? And is it just the Bengals being the Bengals? Are they going to get off to another 0-2 start and then make a rush to the playoffs? But what are you seeing in terms of this game?
Well, for better or worse, it was actually one of the games in my mid-Atlantic area because the Eagles and Ravens had already played earlier in the week. So I'm like, oh, great, Cincinnati, New England. All right, so it's on TV. Let me throw a couple shekels on it. Love Cincinnati, right? -7. Love Cincinnati. Looking at halftime, I'm like, I'm an idiot. I could not believe that New England was playing like that against them. And Cincinnati is a notoriously slow starting team as well. But I didn't think it would be Week 1 against New England, so I was with you on that one.
Yeah, it's 16-10, and then, Jacoby Brissett was efficient, 15-24, 121 yards. We'll go over, the lack of offense on some of these games, but, he just did his job. But Joe Burrow, he did almost as bad as Brissett, 21-29, 164. You really didn't hear much from Jamar Chase. Yeah, he had 6 receptions for 62 yards, but he kind of was just in the background. And the star of the game for Cincinnati was their rookie punter who averaged 64.5 yards per kick. And they did have a chance down the end, but they got stopped deep in their own end, and they decided to punt, and then they never really got the ball back. So, in terms of Cincinnati, is it just rust because Joe Burrow, coming off the wrist injury, did not play a lot in the preseason? What do you think in terms of Cincinnati going into next week? They're at Kansas City. They easily could be 0-2.
I think it hurt them definitely with T. Higgins not playing. I think that was a big factor for them. And their running back position, even though Zach Moss hung fantasy numbers, but real life numbers, not as much. Joe Mixon, on the other hand, had a huge game for the Houston Texans. And I've never been a Joe Mixon guy, but he's on my fantasy team, just throwing it out there. But he had a big game, and the fact that they can't run the ball really with success, and he couldn't throw the ball, I mean, there's not much you can do at that point.
And defensively, Hendrickson and the guys on that defense were not doing much against the Patriots. And, we had talked all along about the Patriots having one of weakest offensive lines in the league, and they did a good job in terms of protecting Brissett. He got the ball out of his hand to a couple of his young playmakers at the receiver position, and it was a good win for Gerard Mayo. Now, new coaches were 2-5 to start the season, so it was Gerard Mayo getting the W, and then the other one was up in Seattle with Mike McDonald. So it's always a tough thing for these guys starting out in the season. Um, but another team I wanted to talk with you about is, and there was a big trend too in terms of this, kickers. Kickers making big kicks. I'm talking about there was 19 field goals of 50 yards or more, which is pretty much an NFL record that I went back and looked at for 1 week in the league. And, you had to talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers and Boswell. What he did was incredible. They only scored 18 points. He scored all of their points. In Atlanta, the terrible towels were waving, and they took over the dome, and it was an ugly win. I was on with Friday with Rich Quinones on his show, here on the Coast Sports Network, Back Your Play. And I told him, I said, I think Steelers are going to win a lot of games ugly this season. And sure enough, it was, TJ Watt giving the pressure, and then Justin Fields doing just enough to set up Boswell for all those kicks. So first, give me your thoughts on all these kickers and how automatic they are. I know Dallas, Aubrey kicked a 66-yarder, but they had to wave it off on an offside. But he made it easily. And these guys are getting very good. So talk about the kickers, and then what do you think about the big win for the Steelers on the road?
I think it's just transcending the sport right now. It used to be there was a couple of guys that could hit him for over 50 yards, and you were like, all right, are they playing in a dome, because that's going to help them out. Now these guys can kick from the parking lot, man. It's like as soon as they get on the field, I mean, you like 10, 15 years ago, you had like Janikowski and like two other guys. Now it's like all these guys can have big legs. They all can hit them now. And it's definitely a weapon on the field, whether it's like normally where someone would punt, try to like, pin somebody back. It's like, no, let's give our kicker a shot here. He can make it from 60 and in. That's a huge weapon. That going forward back to Pittsburgh, though, that's how Pittsburgh does it. It's the mantra of Pittsburgh Steelers football. Mike Tomlin, Cowher before him. They're low-scoring games, but they find a way to win. And we talked about it on the show a few weeks back about Tomlin. We make fun of it a little bit, but the quest for his 500, to finish 500 or better. And he had to win some games in the beginning of the season because that back end is brutal for him. And that's the kind of game he needs to win to be over 500.
Yeah, and early on I was kicking it around with them winning the division, and Nate kind of talked me out of it. But they still have an opportunity to do this. And they were the only team in that division in AFC North that won a game. So it's a big win for them. Justin Fields, he's only 25, and he was 17 to 23, 156. The big thing was he rushed 14 times, 57 yards, had a key keeper on third down late to ice the game, no turnovers. And now you're starting to say, okay, is he going to keep the job? Because Russell Wilson didn't play because of a calf injury. But, he did the most important thing. He did not turn the football over, directed the offense. And it's going to be interesting as the Steelers go into next week. So next week the Steelers are at Denver. Everybody's saying this is their Wilson revenge game. But, right now I'd have to say that they may stick with Justin Fields. What are you thinking there?
I think they absolutely have to stick with Justin Fields. Soon as we heard that Russell Wilson was not going to play and start that game, that gives them more of an ability to open up the offense. I'll put it that way. Him creating, him making the defense, have someone spy, wait for him to see if he's going to make a move. And the one thing with Justin Fields is we know he's a little erratic sometimes throwing the ball. He's a young guy, he's developing. But if he doesn't cough that ball up, he doesn't turn it over, he's a better fit to be quarterback for that team than Russell Wilson, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think Tom was just going to go with the hot hand. Whoever is doing the best job and having his team winning, it may be winning ugly, they don't care. They want to get that defense after people. TJ Watt was just incredible. He had 2 sack strips that were called off on. One was offsides, and I forget the other penalty, but they were big plays that did not count technically, but it just showed you his explosiveness. their secondary, Minka Fitzpatrick and those guys. There's just so many guys that can get after you on that defense. So, I know it's not sexy, but a defense wins, and if they're able to run the football and control the clock with that defense, get turnovers, they're going to be a dangerous team. Now, the game you and I were texting each other back and forth about, and I love the meme that you sent me. And I was thinking of me and Angel's buddy, Rich Q, who you got to check out his show, everybody, on Coast Sports Network. At Drive Time, he's on 3 to 5, so check him out there on there. The Philadelphia Eagles went down to Brazil, and they beat the Green Bay Packers 34-29. That was part of the story, and we'll talk about the game overall. But the big thing was Saquon Barkley. Saquon Barkley, 24 rushes, 109 yards for 4.5 yards per carry, had 3 total touchdowns in this game, which was the first Eagle to do that since T.O. way back in the day. Just explosive. And I think he saved Hurts's bacon a little bit here, but it just showed you how this Eagles team is going to just beat up on people. That offensive line is incredible, and particularly Mekhi Becton is just humongous. They were running behind him every single time at that right guard spot. So talk to me a little bit about Saquon and all the Giants fans that are wiping away their tears right now.
Saquon is one of the things we know. He's a good player. He's an extremely gifted, talented player. It was always the health factor. Can he stay healthy? Can he stay healthy? Week 1, was he healthy? Oh, yeah, and then some. He was running at guys on the second level, pushing them, like knocking them off him. Like, I'm yelling at the TV like he's talking out loud saying, get off me, like he's running over cats. Now, is he going to be like that week 16, 17? That we don't know. But Saquon Barkley on the field, he's legit as it gets.
Yeah, and a lot of people said that the Eagles gave him that contract and 3 years, $37.75 million, $26 million guaranteed. They're like, well, a running back at his age, 27 years old, should you do that? But behind that offensive line, he's going to have pretty much clean looks, yards after contact. He's not going to be getting hit until maybe he's at the second level. And I think he's just happy to be there. And the thing is, though, Jalen Hurts, little up and down in this game. He was 20 of 34, 278. He had 2 TDs that he threw for. He had 2 interceptions. He had 2 near interceptions, one of which would have clearly been a pick 6, and he kind of got away with it. So, I thought he had some ups and downs. I was listening to local Philadelphia radio, and a lot of people were killing him. But, yeah, a lot of the fans got to remember, did not play in the preseason, and they won the game. So what did you think about Jalen Hurts?
We talked about on the show before, too, about do you play your offensive guys in the preseason? Do you not play your offensive guys? And the last time Jalen Hurts saw the field in real competition that we were all privy to see was that Tampa Bay Buccaneers playoff game, which he was horrendous in, and so was the whole team for that matter. You knew that at least one pick was coming. There was no doubt about that. And once again, we don't know with the travel schedule and everything else that played into a lot of things. Now, mind you, if he's doing this in week 2, week 3, week 4, we got a problem here if you're a Philadelphia fan. But as of right now, you kind of write it off and you take the W and you leave South America.
And the Eagles are going to get a little bit more rest. They'll have the opportunity to kind of sit their guys for a couple days before they get ready for Atlanta on Monday Night Football. So they're going to be ready. And that's the thing. They got the W, and we know week 1 is important because last year, of course, there's 14 teams that make the playoffs, and 9 of those teams won in week 1. So it just shows you, it sets the tone for the season. And then once you get to 2-0, I think it's pretty much your odds get a lot higher in terms of making the playoffs. And if you get to 3-0, 75% of the teams that get to 3-0 make the playoffs. So everybody's just trying to stack W's, and it's a long season. I always caution everybody, don't make season-long assertions on week 1 because, like we said, we talked about how bad the Bengals looked, and the Patriots look pretty good. Well, who knows where either of those teams are going to be in the next couple of weeks. So you got to get to about week 7 or so, probably around October, November, and then you'll have a clear picture of your team. And it shows teams that get to week 7 after that with a winning record, they have a very good chance of making the playoffs. So, I caution all the fan bases. The thing with Hurts, though, too, he was running a bit too much for my taste. He rushed 13 times for 33 yards, taking a lot of hits. So Hurts was throwing his shoulder into guys. Lamar Jackson, who we can get to in a minute, he was throwing his shoulder into guys. And you're wondering, are they going to end up like Cam? Are they going to end up like Andrew Luck, where they're so beat up from these running plays and trying to take on defenders that they can't last through a season? And particularly for the Eagles, that would be disaster because we know who Kenny Pickett is at this time of the season. So talk to me a little about the rushing, and then we'll get to the other side of the ball with the Green Bay Packers.
I think a lot of it has to do also with the fact that it's week 1. It's now national TV. As far as both those games, you have Lamar on national TV, you have Jalen Hurts on national TV. Everyone wants a show out on national TV. Everyone, they know the prime time's on them right there. They want to be that guy. The MVPs like Lamar has, Jalen aspires to. That being said, running the ball like that in week 1, there were RPOs the Ravens were calling. Lamar was just taking off, and he was taking some shots. And I'm around a rabid Ravens fan base, and I told him straight up, I was like, he will not finish the rest of the season if he runs the ball like that. And they're like, well, he wants to show because against Kansas City, the playoffs last year, blah, blah. I was like, he's going to get hurt. They can't let him run the ball like that. It made no sense to me.
Sure. And I watch a lot of high school football, a lot of college football. Yes, the quarterbacks can get away with that type of mentality and not sliding and all that. But when you're taking those shots, and these professional guys are so big, so fast, you're eventually going to get hurt. And all you have to look is at RG3, Cam Newton. I mean, it just shows you after a while they're just so beat up, you can't make it through a season. So, good win for the Eagles. Talking about quarterbacks that got hurt late in the game, the Packers are looking to go for a Hail Mary or something. And unfortunately, Jordan Love, he gets high load with Carter had a hold of him, and I forget the other lineman. And the Eagles knock him out. Looks like an MCL sprain, they're saying. Luckily, it was an ACL. You thought it was an ACL when it happened. But he's going to be out a couple weeks. Can the Packers survive with Sean Clifford or Malik Willis? I mean, is their season lost already if they don't have Love for 4 to 5 weeks?
If they don't have Love for 4 to 5 weeks, yeah, they're buried. They're buried at that point. Neither one of those guys are going to go out there and win you more than one game if you're lucky. And the thing is, as we know, Green Bay does have weapons on that team. Those guys don't have the ability to get those guys the ball. So if Malik Willis is out there, you better hope that Jordan Love's only out 3 to 4 weeks. You get 5 to 6. I mean, you're thinking about next year already. Maybe you're buried so bad.
Yeah, and when I look at the Packers' schedule, so they have Indianapolis. That's a tough game. We can talk about them in a minute. At Tennessee played a little better than I thought in their recent game. Minnesota, another team that won, and at the Rams, another team that played very tough and lost in overtime. Arizona, Houston, at Jacksonville, Detroit, and they don't have their bye to week 10. So, if you're waiting to week 10, I just don't see it happening for them. It's unfortunate because you don't want to see those injuries. They're talking about fantasy. I had Puka Nacua last night, and he gets hurt, and the guy I'm playing had Cooper Kupp, and he just went off. He scores 30 points, and I'm like, no, the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
But it just shows you guys can get injured and hurt at any time in the NFL. And with the season probably going to 18 games, it's going to be a marathon for these teams to keep these guys healthy. They're going to have the right players on their practice squad and guys ready by the phone because, it's a hard-hitting, tough business in the National Football League, particularly that Rams and Detroit game. They were hitting really hard in that game. You could just see the bodies flying in that one. So we're here on Lloyd Vance's Inside Football on 102.9 The Game, the Coastal Sports Network. I'm here with Kevin Midgette, and we are recapping, talking about week 1. So glad everybody could be with us. Go ahead, Kevin.
The one thing to just go back to that Green Bay situation real quick, you don't want to rush someone like Jordan Love back. He's a young guy that you just gave a lot of money to. And it just makes me think about when Carson Wentz had his injuries and the Eagles signed him to that deal and everything else. And he rushed himself back real quick. And what happened? He got hurt even more. You have to
Yeah.
you have to be responsible with these players out there, even if they want to get out there, even if you're losing. This is your franchise quarterback. You're not playing the short game. You're playing the long game. You better make sure Jordan Love's healthy when you do bring him back.
Yeah, and the thing about the Packers too, they have a really good coach in the floor. He's going to find smart ways to get the ball out of the quarterback's hands and into the playmakers. And now Jacobs looked pretty good for them, 16 rushes for 84 yards. They matched the Eagles in terms of pretty much every stat. They both had net passing right around the same, 251 for the Packers, 266 for the Eagles. Total yards, 414 for Green Bay, 410 for the Eagles. But it was a good competitive game. I know everybody's going to say way too many penalties, and I do agree with that. 10 penalties for Green Bay, 7 for the Eagles. So you're talking about 17 flags. I know the refs are ramping up too, but that's a lot of flags. And the playing surface obviously wasn't the best because of a soccer stadium. I do think that long flight had something to do with some of the sloppy play. So I know the Eagles are glad to get back to the Philadelphia area. And hi, my cousins. They showed me all their pictures. They sent them. They were having a good time there. There were a lot of Eagles fans, down there. But like I said, that's a tough trip to want to take. I think I'd rather go to Vegas if I was going to go to a football game in person like that, a travel destination game. But good win for the Eagles. Obviously, the whole Saquon Barkley thing. The Giants fans are crying in their beer, but the Eagles fans are excited because they have so many weapons. Their secondary, Q Mitchell looked pretty good. Making some plays back there. I think the defensive line of the Eagles, they had 2 sacks, but they got to get some more pressure. I think they're missing Fletcher Cox. What do you think about that? And then we'll move on to another game.
The thing you worry about the Eagles' defensive line is if they don't get pressure, you have some holes out there. Linebacker, of course, has never been one of their big concerns. And you have inexperienced guys and you have older guys out there. So the more time that they're left on their own out there, it's going to be bad at some point. So without pressure on them, they're not going to go as far as most Eagles fans hope they will.
Yeah, and an interesting thing, we can't not talk about this game, and I forget. You talk about linebackers, and I've been killing the Eagles for years, saying they have not had a playmaking linebacker since probably Jeremiah Trotter, and they had guys like Willie Thomas back in the day making plays all over the place, and that's what Zach Baun was doing. I mean, he was incredible. Zach Baun had 14 tackles, 2 sacks. I mean, he was all over the place, and he was the fill-in guy for Devin Smith, who might have just got Lou Gehrig while he pipped out there because the way Baun played, he needs to start the rest of the season. So, just talk about Zach Baun.
You got to love when you see a guy that you don't expect a lot from. I mean, he's an NFL player. He's on the roster. But when he comes out and plays like that with like his hair on fire, hitting anything that's moving near him, I mean, as a defensive fan, you have to do nothing but salivate watching that. And I'm looking forward to seeing what he does in the future now. Was it a one-game thing? Was he so hyped for this one game? Or is this going to be a constant thing for him? Because if it is, the Eagles might have fell backwards into something here.
Yeah, they might have, and the Eagles defense needs that. The Eagles, they have it's they say it's the 6th easiest schedule in the NFL, and they're going to have their up and down moments, and as I said, they're going to play the NFC South, so there's some games that people are going to be interested in. So they have Atlanta coming up Monday Night Football. Then they're at New Orleans, who had a good game. We'll talk about them. At Tampa Bay, who we'll talk about, and then they have their bye early in Week 5. So, good win for the Eagles. And as Sirianni said, look, there's no style points. You can't complain about a win. A win's a win. Keep moving on to the next one. And there were some good things for the Eagles that they did, some bad things they need to work on. But, overall, I thought good effort. And we talked about that. This is the NFL kickoff game we have to talk about. I know I talked about it with Rich last week on his show on Friday. But that was an exciting game the Ravens and the Chiefs to kick off the season on Thursday night. Now we know it's a spectacular where they have games on Thursday, they have games Friday, and then Sunday, which is the regular one, and then now the Monday night football game's going to kick off in a minute. Um, I'm going with San Francisco, by the way. So let me know your pick there, and then we can talk about Kansas City and the Ravens, the game, the toe game. We're going to call this one, Kevin.
Okay, first going to the San Francisco Jets game. No Christian McCaffrey tonight for the San Francisco 49ers. So I'm leaning to the Jets with the +4 there. I'm just throwing out there. That's what I'm leaning towards right there. Doesn't mean San Francisco can't win, but I think the Jets can hang now a little bit more. You take the McCaffrey, equation out of it. Going on forward though to the Baltimore Ravens Kansas City Chiefs game. I mean, it's week one once again, and it's just like we sensationalize everything. Like everyone just jumps at something. Hot takes week one, hot takes week two. My hot take on week one in that game, I saw two older tight ends out there, and Travis Kelce and Mark Andrews. I saw two guys that aren't what they were before, and I don't think it's going to change that much in the future. I think Mahomes can help Kelce maybe a little further down the road. I don't know if Lamar can do that with Andrews because the emergence of Isaiah Likely now. He seems to become the pass receiving tight end where Andrews now is going to, I think, stay in more to block.
Yeah, and Mark Andrews was a weapon a couple years ago, but he got banged up, and he just does not seem like the same guy. And it's funny you talk about Kelce because getting back to fantasy football, my son has Kelce, and he was screaming. He's like, he's done. He's washed. That's the way the kids, he's washed. I'm done with him. He's talking about trading him. I said, hold on, give it a couple weeks, and we'll see. But he was not doing much in this game. And you do wonder how much he has left to take. He is 35. Last year, he did not get 1,000 yards like he normally did. And, of course, everybody's saying, oh, it's Taylor Swift. So, but we'll see. Good win for the Chiefs. And they showed their explosiveness in this game, particularly Xavier Worthy. He had 2 receptions on 3 targets for 47 yards and a TD. But that jet sweep he ran for 20 yards, he was just running away from everybody. He reminded me of a young Tyreek Hill, the way he was just getting past everybody. It was ease. And Andy Reid's going to find special ways to get him the ball, gadget plays. And it just shows you, okay, I feel pretty good about my three-peat prediction out there for these Chiefs. What are you thinking in terms of the Chiefs? And then in terms of the Ravens, I know we touched on a little bit with Lamar Jackson. Can he get over the hump? A lot of people are saying he'll never be able to do it. I think a big thing for them, other than Likely, their receivers are not good. Flowers had some plays here and there, but when you're counting on Nelson Aguilar and Bateman, they just, who are both bust first rounders from other places. Well, Bateman's from the Ravens, but Aguilar's an Eagles first round bust. But both of them just have not lived up to their draft expectations. What are you thinking in terms of Ravens? Can they bounce back? The Ravens have the Raiders this week in Baltimore, so I would think they would have a good chance of bouncing back.
Just to touch on that Xavier Worthy comment one more time, if people are on the fence about him, he's a problem. He's going to be a problem for a long time, and especially if nothing happens with Rice out there as well. He's got 2 legitimate weapons now. Hollywood Brown's talking about working his way back. So Kansas City, they're the team to beat still. I remember like a couple weeks ago, I was like, no, they're not going to do it. And then by the end of the show, I flip-flopped on myself. And I'm sticking with the flip-flop. They are the team to beat till someone shows me elsewise. The Ravens, on the other hand, that's been their Achilles heel, wide receivers. They've had wide receiver problems for years now. And the thing is, you almost give them credit because they're trying to address it with Bateman. And they went and got Zay Flowers as well. And Aguilar, once again, if Aguilar is one of your 3 receivers, you got receiver problems, let's be honest. But it's like they know the problem in the room, they just can't find a solution to it. And that's why they have to give the ball to Derrick Henry, who barely saw the ball that much in the second half. There was a lot of Justice Hill going on.
Yeah, Derrick Henry had a
So I think Baltimore is an offense in flux once again.
Yeah, he had 10 rushes early and had a touchdown, and he disappeared. They took him off the field a lot because he's not a pass catcher per se, but they have to establish the run. Everybody knows that's the Ravens thing. Ronnie Stanley had some issues in terms of penalties, the way he was lining up. They were calling that on him over and over again. But the Ravens want to be physical, and we'll see if they're able to turn it around. I thought they did give a good effort in the second half in terms of making this game a lot closer. They beat them 10-7 in the fourth quarter. And then, obviously, as we said, the potential touchdown was overturned. Lamar Jackson is electric in terms of running the football. I just don't like seeing him doing it so much. He only needs 730 more yards to break Michael Vick's all-time rushing record for quarterbacks at 6,109. This is 55th time in his career that he ran for at least 50 yards. So he is dynamic, but he's lighter this season. And as we said, if he keeps running it like that, he's going to get hit. The story to me, though, was likely 9 catches for 111 and a TD and the almost game winner. So I think it's going to be a fun one to watch. We may see, well, I won't say Green Bay, Philly again, but we may see Baltimore and Kansas City again in the playoffs. That's going to be a fun one to watch. We're here on Lloyd Vance Insider Football on 102.9 The Game, the Coast Sports Network. I'm not sure about Scott Kaxmar. Hopefully he'll join us. If not, Kevin and I will keep rolling on the games, and eventually maybe we'll bring Angel in, see what his take was on week one. But we'll just keep going right down the list because all these games are pretty much exciting, pretty good storylines in all of them. And, 105th season in the National Football League, they always put on a show. We talk about the ratings and the numbers and everything, but it's the most popular thing going, whether it's fantasy football, the gambling, but I just think people love football. And, as soon as the red zone came on, Scott Hansen was like, your 200-some day wait is over. Football is back. I know my son and I we were jumping around. We were just so excited for the games to be on because I do like the Phillies and so much, and they're having a good season, but there's just nothing like the NFL. And so the next game I want to touch on is we'll just go down to sleep. And this is the one I should have picked for my survivor pool. And this I'm not sure if it was you, Kevin, or somebody was trying to talk me into. It was Rich. The Saints being better this year. The Saints thump the Carolina Panthers 47-10, and this was one of the 10 home teams that won. So home teams were 10-5 so far going into tonight. So, and I think this was the ultimate home field advantage. Carr looked good, 19-23, 200 yards, 3 TDs. It was a laugher. Now, talk about it from both sides of it. Talk about the Saints. Are they for real? And then in terms of Canales and the Panthers, are they really this bad? Is it, I hate to kill a young player, but I think Bryce Young, that might be one of the worst first-round quarterback picks in quite a while. So talk to me about this game.
I think it has more to do with Carolina's just that bad. I think Carolina is in the draft war room right now, already thinking about what they're going to do with their number 1 pick. They're going over tape from college right now for next season. That's how bad that team's going to be. Is New Orleans? I wouldn't say New Orleans is bad, but they're right in that middle. They win 7 to 9 games. It depends on how it slides for them. I mean, they're not world beaters by any means, but that Carolina team is terrible.
Yeah, they are, and it's funny because some Eagles fans I know were complaining about Miles Sanders leaving. He only had 5 rushes for 22 yards. He clearly does not have the same burst. Carolina overpaid for him. They jettisoned Burns, sent him off to the Giants, and there's just not a lot there. And Bryce Young, as I said, I don't want to kill the kid. I'm not going to give him my lackey. We'll go over game balls and lackeys later in the show. But, Young, he's a candidate for a lackey. 13 of 30, 161, no touchdowns, 2 interceptions. I mean, wow. It just shows you college football is easy, especially when you got all those 5-star players, on the offensive line and the playmakers on offensive receivers at Alabama. It's like he won. I think he competed for the national championship, but he won the Heisman, and it was so easy for him at college. And you wonder, is he going to be able to flick the switch? So, tough going for him. Kudos to the Saints. Dennis Allen, a coach, I kind of said, okay, I don't think he's going to compete in the NFC South, but the Saints did a nice job, particularly their cornerback Taylor. He became the first DB in 58 years in Saints history to have 3 sacks in a game. So they had, Young on roller skates, and the poor kid was running for his life. Now, the interesting thing is you talk about first round quarterbacks. One of them had not won a debut game going all the way back to David Carr in, like, I don't know, the 2002, something like that. And it was your guy. You talked to me. You said, USC quarterbacks, and it really wasn't Caleb Williams, but Caleb Williams got it done when he needed to. The Bears with a huge home win, 24-17 over the Tennessee Titans, and it just showed you the Bears are built around their defense, special teams. They have a rushing attack. Hopefully Williams gets better. But the Titans, talk about quarterbacks and lackeys. I think they may not have a quarterback. Will Levis is terrible in this one. So talk to me about this one. Bears over Tennessee, and they're excited in the Windy City.
As well, they should be, though. I mean, you had the number one draft pick, who's the quarterback of the future, and you got to win to start the season out. I mean, who couldn't help but love that? Will Levis, though, oh my good lord! I mean, you think about it this way: you kept him and got rid of Malik Willis. How bad is Malik Willis at this point? And we're going to find out next week when he starts for Green Bay, probably. That's how bad that Tennessee team is. I don't see a lot on that team right there. You have an aging DeAndre Hopkins on the team. They just don't really have a lot to offer, to be honest. And they're a team that's going to struggle probably to win 4 games this year.
Yeah, and you talk about Tajay Spears at running back. I think he led him with 4 catches for 11 yards. And you really didn't hear D-Hop's name called. So I think he's another one. Like my son would say, he's washed. And not a lot going on there. Will Levis, 19 to 32, 127 yards passing for the whole game. 2 interceptions, only 1 touchdown. So he just wasn't doing much. And Caleb was glad to be he wasn't driving the car. He was in the car. So he won the game. He said, obviously, his numbers were not the best, and he didn't really care about the numbers. But he did. He wanted to have better numbers in his debut because he was face of hard knocks and all that. He was only 14 to 29, 93 yards passing. That's it. 5 rushes for 15 yards. He did have a huge first down run that he ran for. But the key in this game was there was a block punt, and Simone Biles' husband Owens picked it up and ran it back in for a touchdown. That kind of turned the tide of this game. So is Eberflus going to be able to keep going? The Bears, they're at Houston this week, at Indianapolis. They got the Rams, Carolina, then they play Jacksonville over in England, and then they have their bye week 7. So, are the Bears for real? What are you thinking?
I think there'll be a fun little story to see the development of Caleb Williams and that team. I mean, the teams that you just mentioned right now, with the exception of one, you might be lucky to win one of those games. So they win 2 games before the bye. They've got to consider themselves lucky at that point with 3.
Yeah, so they're probably saying, all right, Carolina, you got shot week 5, and then overseas in England, maybe Jacksonville. But yeah, they got some tough games, and they're going to have to lean on their running game and at defense. Swift didn't have to run the ball much, 10 rushes for 30 yards, but he did have a huge 2-point conversion catch. And the Bears could be one of those teams with a schedule that's a little bit easier given the way they played last year. They could sneak in the playoffs. I actually had them sneaking and getting that 7th spot, and everybody was kind of laughing at me. So we'll see. All right, we talked about that. Here on Inside Football, we're going to continue going around week 1 with Kevin Midgette. And we're here on the Coast Sports Network and 102.9 The Game. So glad you could be with us, Angel Behind the Glass. This one was interesting because I was texting with, my son, Nate's a big He's a big Bills fan. So the Bills get it done, 34-28. They were down at a certain point in this game. And, they Josh Allen put the cape on. He's close to Steve Young in terms of he's got 4 career games with multiple rushing touchdowns and passing touchdowns. So talk to me about the Bills. They beat the Cardinals 34-28. It's a home game, but is this something that they can continue? I think he's going to have some help. What do you think in terms of the Buffalo Bills? and is Bills Mafia happy?
Well, the one person I worry about with that game in Buffalo and Arizona is poor Nate. I know he's super conflicted with the Bills playing Kyler Murray. He's a super Kyler Murray fan, so I know he
Yeah.
was torn on that one. They should have beat Arizona. They had to have beat Arizona. I mean, you can't start the season off 0-1 like that. They're good enough to make up for some deficiencies earlier in the game against bad teams. Now, once you start playing Miami and the Jets, we'll see. But like other teams in that conference that are good, you're not going to be able to do that. You have to get out quick, but we can attribute that to week one as well. So, I mean, everyone, like I said, we just jump at things week one. We don't know anything. About week 3 or 4, you kind of get a feeling who's who at that point. But these first couple weeks, it's like you don't know if it's rust or they're that bad.
Right. And then without these preseason games that we're talking about, and less coaches wanting to have a take a chance with these players and training camp, they're like, okay, let's kind of wait and see. But Josh Allen, 18 to 23, 232 yards, no interceptions, which is good for him, and 2 TDs passing. He did have a fumble on the first possession, and you're like, oh boy, here we go. But then he turned it around, particularly that last touchdown he rushed for. He's jumping over guys and all that. He's another one. He puts himself in harm's way too much. And now that Diggs is gone, you really didn't see Kincaid have a big game at the tight end position for them. With Diggs not being there, you feel like he's like, okay, I got to do it all myself. Maybe he should lean on guys like Shakur and all those guys. But it's a good win for him. Nate, I talked to him. He said he liked their Cook, got himself going a little bit. 19 rushes for 71 yards, and that's what they're going to need. They're going to need that. In terms of the Cardinals, though, what is Gannon doing? They got to get the ball to Marvin Harrison Jr. He had 1 reception on 3 targets for 4 yards. Kyler Murray only threw for 162 yards in this game. So I was wondering, was it the Bills' defense or was he kind of another one of these guys? He didn't play in the preseason too much, and he looked rusty, particularly in the second half where he's 5 of 12 for only 31 yards. So are the Cardinals going to be able to right the ship? They have the Rams coming up. That's a tough assignment. The Rams, even though they've got a lot of injuries, offensive line, I just think, and we'll go over the games in a minute, for next week. But I just think it's going to be tough for Arizona, Sled, after watching a lot of that game.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one. We talked about before as well. Marvin Harrison Jr. He's going to face a lot of double teams because he's the best receiver on that team. Besides McBride, maybe the tight end is going to get a lot of volume as well. That being said, you have to get him the ball. I don't care if it's a bubble screen, if it's a little slant. You have to get him into the game, and he wasn't anywhere near that game. So a lot of rookies had a rough week one, I'll put it that way. And there was a lot of hype going into their first game, too. There's probably a lot of emotions and everything. So see if he can, come back a little bit more in week 2.
Yeah, and the NFL is not easy. Like I was saying, you got to work, you got to study. And, hopefully Kyler's learned that they famously talked about, your tendonitis from playing too many video games and not looking at his playbook. And hopefully he's learned his lesson. But he's another one. Kyler, though, he's smart. He gets down. He slides. He gets out of bounds. He rushed 5 times for 57 yards. So, that's probably right around the right barometer rate for your quarterback. Probably about 6 rushers or less per game because you don't want to see him getting hit a lot. But good comeback win for the Bills. For a while, they were playing terrible. They were down 17-10 at the half. They woke up in the second half, 14 points in the third quarter, 10 points in the fourth quarter. So good win for them, and their defense did just enough at the end to keep the Bills off the board. Let's keep going now. This is one, and I can't wait till tomorrow. I'm going to be on Rich Q's show with him here on the Coast Sports Network during the drive time. From 3 to 5, I'll be on with him sometime around there. And the thing is, the Giants, and I didn't want to do it in terms of, I was thinking somebody else about the lackey, but Daniel Jones is terrible. I mean, he is terrible. And they looked horrible too in their Montreal Canadian uniforms. I'm like, what is it, a hockey game or something? So talk to me about the Giants. We thought they were going to be at some for some odd reason. I thought they were going to win this game. Maybe Darnold would see some ghosts or have some interceptions. Darnold played pretty well in this game for the Vikings, but the story is the Giants and how bad they are. I love that meme you said, where the owner Mara was like, "Oh, if Saquon goes to Eagles, I'm going to be sick." Well, he should be sick about his own team. Talk to me about the New York Giants, and can they get out of this potential tailspin that I see coming?
Oh, absolutely not. No, that tailspin is probably going to continue at least until 2027, 2028. I mean, you have Malik Neighbors on that team, and there is nothing positive I could think of as a Giants fan right now that would be happy about for the future. Did you see what they were doing to Daniel Jones even when he left the game? They were waiting for him to walk to his car so they could give him more grief. It's like, I had all the game to yell at you. You know what? I'm not done. Where's the parking lot at where these guys park at? I got some more to say to Daniel Jones. That guy was wearing it. And once again, at the end of the day, does he really care? He got paid, but there's got to be the thing where it's like, man, these guys are really on me. I got to do something. I just don't know. I see no bright spots for this Giants football team.
Yeah, and he's got that nice girlfriend Kay Adams who used to be on Good Morning Football. Maybe he has somebody to give him a hug when he gets home. But Daniel Jones, 22 of 42, 186, two interceptions, no touchdowns, looked tentative in the pocket. He's getting sacked. He's just you can't even. And I know now, and we'll talk in a minute about Dak getting the 60 million bag and Jones getting 46. That just shows you it's like some of these quarterbacks getting paid way too much money. I don't think Dayball, if this team keeps playing like they are, he's going to not be around as well as Daniel Jones. So, great comment here. I see from Penguin AZ, he's a Packers fan. Yeah, Kevin and I talked a little bit about the loss of Jordan Love. That's devastating to that team. The loss of Jordan Love. I'm just not sure how long it's going to be. I think it's going to be at least 5 weeks. You say, oh, at least it wasn't the ACL for the season. Malik Willis, I've seen enough of him when he's starting for Tennessee that he was good at Liberty, but as a pro quarterback, I just don't know how much he has. And Sean Clifford either. You want to touch a little bit on this comment here about Malik Willis and the Jordan Love situation here for our texter?
Yeah, most definitely. It's it's week one. You don't want it to be a situation. Remember when Randall Cunningham got hit in the knee by
Oh,
Bryce
yeah.
Pop playing for Green Bay, and that was the Eagles' Super Bowl year. And sure enough, by week one, it's like, all right, it's over. So you want to be optimistic about this. Jordan Love's injury, hopefully, because he's a talent. He's a guy I like to watch play. I want to see him out there with those young receivers. If he's only out 3 to 5 weeks, they'll be all right. If it becomes something more severe, and like we talked about earlier, they rush him back and he does something even worse than the injury, that's a season killer right there. So we were saying earlier, they have to make sure he is injury free by the time they bring him back. You can't rush him.
Yeah, and this situation shows you, much like we talked about that old Randall situation, you have to have a capable backup. Way back in the day, last season, there were 67 quarterbacks that started games in the National Football League. And that just shows you, guys are going to get hurt. They're going to get banged up. And I remember that Eagles team, eventually they're bringing in the old Ken O'Brien and Jeff Rutledge, guys that were over the hill. And you knew that they had no chance, So that's why every team's trying to get a capable backup, but it's very hard. There's just not a lot of guys out there. And hopefully the Packers with LaFleur, he can find a way to keep it going with Jacobs and the rest of those young core. Because as Kevin said, I think they have some good young receivers. I like Eldon Jenkins on offensive line. And hopefully they can pull it together and then Love can come back. So thanks for your comment there. Yeah, well, getting back to the Giants real quick and the Vikings game, Sam Darnold, 19 to 24, 208, two TDs, only had one interception. He got the ball to Jefferson, 4 catches for him, 59 yards, one TD. And then Minnesota got Aaron Jones going, who I wasn't sure how much he had left. He had 14 rushes, 94 yards for one TD. Minnesota, their defense is not very good. but they may be a little better than I thought. They do have Harrison Smith, who had some good plays in their secondary. Just tell me about the Vikings real quick before we jump to other teams.
I think Sam Darnold might be one of those guys. When he came in the league, he was supposed to be, the franchise savior and everything else, and it didn't pan out because some of these guys get rushed too quickly. We're looking at Bryce Young with Carolina. We don't know what Bo Nix in Denver, that situation, how he played, but Darnold might have been one of those guys. He was rushed, then he got passed around a little bit, and it's like he could possibly be a capable quarterback. Someone who's going to go out there, he's going to keep your team afloat, he's going to give them a chance to win. And if you get lightning in a bottle one year and he becomes that quarterback like Brad Johnson going to Tampa Bay or something like that, or Trent Dilfer going to the Ravens, it's like he's the game manager. That's what I'm looking for here. Game manager. Don't do too much, don't cost us the game, and keep us in it.
Yeah, and he's Darnold. This is his chance to save his career. He's been on like 3-4 teams, so this is his last chance. He was that bonus baby, but he's a USC quarterback, as you said. We know how some of them have played in the NFL, so good win for him. Keep jumping around. Time is going quick. That's how you know, Kevin, that there's some good content from week one here on Lloyd Vance Insider Football. Talking a lot here on the Coastal Sports Network, 102.9 The Game. Thank you for being us with you this evening. A lot of our listeners in the area, Miami and Jacksonville. Now, this game was interesting because Miami was a bit down. I don't know if it was what happened before the game with Tyreek Hill, and you can touch on that. But they woke up, and Tua actually threw for the most yards this week, 338 yards and 1 TD. He started getting the ball out of his hand, the Waddle and Hill, and they started, they got the sports car rolling down the street. So, Miami woke up late, win 20-17 over Jacksonville. Talk to me about Miami. They have the big game where they host the Buffalo Bills on Thursday night this week. So what'd you think of Miami and Jacksonville?
I think Miami, as a team that's constructed right now and everyone healthy, they're legit. They're definitely legit. It didn't do them any favors having to go and play outside in the cold last year in the playoffs. They want no parts of that smoke in that game. So the fact that if they have the talent, if they fall behind, they can come back. And as long as, like you said, they've had trouble having their quarterback healthy, their running backs healthy, everyone stays on par right there. This is their year to take that division between Buffalo and the Jets. And even though the Patriots won week one, I'm not throwing them in the mix. This is their year to win that division and go forward and have some home playoff games.
Yeah, it's interesting because I was kind of down on Miami in terms of making the playoffs, and I thought it was all Buffalo and the Jets. But Miami's going to be a team to answer to, particularly Chen was running the football between the tackles. He had 7 catches for 76 yards. As long as they're getting the ball out of their hands, they're playmakers. This team's going to be dangerous, and they get Phillips and back on defense. He seemed to be flying around the ball. Holland had a great job in their secondary and their DBs. They're tough. So, they have Anthony Weaver, who brings that Ravens mentality down there to this defense, and we'll see how Miami's going to do. That was a good win for them. ATN had a bad fumble for Jacksonville because they were up 24-7 at the time. They had a chance to put this game away. Huge fumble when he was about to score. And then Trevor Lawrence, he got all the money too. 12 of 21 for 162, no interceptions, and only 1 touchdown. So Trevor Lawrence, is he worth it? Not worth all that money he's getting. I think he's making about $54 million a year.
Trevor Lawrence is that guy that just fell off the wayside because after he signed, Jordan Love, got paid. Dak Prescott got paid. Everyone forgets that Trevor Lawrence got a big sack of money as well. Trevor Lawrence is that guy. He's going to get you maybe a wild card win in the playoffs. I don't foresee him being that guy. I'll tell you what they might have found, though, is a wide receiver in Brian Thomas Jr.
How about that? Yes.
Yeah, he looks like he might have something there.
Yeah, and he's one of those guys. Fantasy football alert, he's probably wasn't high on a lot of people's draft list. Definitely get him because Christian Kirk, he did not do a lot in this game. So lots of games to talk about, so we'll keep moving here on Lloyd Vance Insider Football. Wanted to get you both your takes on this one. We have a lot of listeners in the Tampa area. The Bucks, 37-20 and they beat the Washington Commanders, who I think are going to be one of the surprise teams around the NFL. The Commanders did stick around; they're exciting with Daniels, who we can talk about in a minute. But the story of this game was Baker Mayfield. He was running, he was throwing, making plays. 24 of 30, 289, 4 TD passes, and he's on pace for 68 TDs in the season. So how about Baker and the Bucks? And you can't talk about this game without talking about Mike Evans, 2 TDs in it.
Yeah, it's one of the. I tell you what, I've never been the biggest Baker guy, but I gotta give him his flowers. He was on point, and Mike Evans is basically putting a bookend here of a Hall of Fame career together as well. Tampa, and you know what they think? I think now that they're that team that everyone just, oh, they won a division, that's no big deal. Oh, they won another division, that's not a big deal. It's a bad division. They're winning divisions, and it's like it's time to give them some props and kudos as well. These guys have been playing together now for a little bit. They seem to have a chemistry together, and as long as you win football games, that's all that matters.
Yeah, Kevin, and huge win for them. We're going to find out who they are this week. Coming up, they're at Detroit. That's going to be a playoff rematch. But Tampa did look good. They were injured a little bit. They had a couple guys get injured in this game, particularly defensively, but they did a good job. And on the other side, you definitely got to tip your cap to Daniels. He kept the Commanders in this game, 17 to 24, 184, no TDs, no interceptions, passing. But the big thing was he ran for 88 yards and 2 TDs. But he's another one. He better buckle that helmet, number one. That helmet kept coming off, and he better learn to slide. He was like doing a barrel roll or something. And I was like, man, take him, get one of the Devil Rays to teach him how to slide or something. So what were you seeing with Jaden Daniels?
Jaden Daniels is a gamer, man. He's out there to make plays. He knows he is. The passing's going to come, but when he gets in trouble, it's going to be his first instinct is going to be to run and create something. And hopefully it doesn't get him killed out there. Like you said, he's got to learn how to slide. He's got to buckle up the helmet. At the same time, though, he does bring some electricity to the field for a franchise that's needed it since RG3 before his injury.
Yeah, you have Dan Quinn and Cliff Kingsbury there. Did a good job with that team. And I think they're going to be fun to watch and possibly could get their first win this week. They got the downtrodden Giants in Washington. So I think that's a good opportunity for the Commanders there. Biggest story in the NFL, right away I turned the TV on probably around 9 a.m. in the morning, and one of my friends texted me, said, did you see Dak? Dak got the bag. He got the money. I was like, he's NFL's first 60 million player, 4 years, 240, 230 million guaranteed. And so you have the dichotomy of the highest paid quarterback there, and then you have the other quarterback on the other side. And you talk about washed. I think Deshaun Watson is done. I don't think there's anything left. So talk to me about Dallas and Cleveland and about the two quarterbacks that played in this game.
Well, first, I'd like to say I hope that Jerry Jones lives to be 120 years old so he can keep making these great contracts happen. I think I don't get it, man. It's like they sat there and they nickel and dimed Dak for like 2 years when the market was so much lower. So if they just would have locked the guy up there, they wouldn't have had to pay the money they are right now. So they sat there and hemmed and hawed all these years, and now you're paying them $60 million a year. Good luck with that, Jerry. I think you're a genius. Keep up the good work. Moving on to the Cleveland-Dallas game, though, yeah, Deshaun Watson, he's cooked, man. He's got nothing in him. The worst pass I saw in the NFL on Sunday, did you see the Deshaun Watson pass that just went off to the sideline, wasn't even near the guys? I think C.D. Lamb caught it on the sideline. It was like, where are you throwing the ball? He seems like he doesn't want to be out there. There's allegations that came out again today. Once again, it was like TMZ and some other stuff about another situation with a woman and everything else. I mean, you got to take it. There's still that stuff following him around, and you can't tell me he doesn't hear it. He just looks like a guy that's like, I'm just going to cash these checks and I'm getting out of here.
Yeah, and Haslam, He needs to pass. He needs a massage to pass. One of our texters wrote that. You know what? Yeah, and I won't touch that. With the Deshaun is a mess. He's as crazy as it sounds. Put Jameson. You know what I mean? So Cleveland, I thought they were going to finish pretty low in that division. The Steelers are only ones to win this week. Cleveland, they're at Jacksonville. They got the Giants. I'm going to call that Week 3 game the toilet bowl. Then they're at the Raiders, at Washington, at Philadelphia, and I'm sure the Philly fans are going to have a field day with Watson and all that. There'll probably be guys holding up all kinds of massage signs and all that. And then they have the Bengals and the Ravens. So long road for Cleveland. Watson, I'm going to get to him in a few minutes when we give out our awards. But he was terrible in this game. And as you said, I don't think there's much left. Dak, good for him. He got the money. But the Jerry Jones, now you got to pay Micah Parsons. How are you going to do that with CeeDee Lamb? And Parsons was incredible in this game. Even another guy like Zach Baum we were talking about earlier, Parsons was all over the place, tipping passes, pressuring the quarterback, sacking the quarterback. So, they were going to need to figure that out. Mike Zimmer did a nice job in his re-debut as their defense coordinator, allowed only 230 yards. And as I said, Watson, they just pressured him over and over again. Kevin, one of the best games probably was the last game last night. Now, stayed up late, and it was worth it. Overtime game. The Lions, who I've picked to go to the Super Bowl and played the Chiefs, it took them a little while to get going, but I think that big offensive line, they ran behind that, and they just out-physicaled the Rams at the end. They win it 26-20 in overtime. Talk to me about this one. The Lions are a dangerous team if they get that defense together. They have young guys in that secondary who are making a lot of penalties and allowing some big plays there. But they're explosive, too. Don't forget about Williams, who's now, he's another electric young guy who's fast, can catch the football. And they have a lot of weapons on his team. We didn't even talk about Amon-Ra St. Brown in this game a lot. So talk to me about Sunday Night Football.
There was a few things that stood out. One of the things, and I have it in my own fantasy money league team, I was telling everyone Jameson Williams is the one to get. He really hasn't played well. Mind you, is he on my team? Yes. Did I start him? No. I wanted to see what week 1 would do. But he's on the roster. He might get some looks next week. That game was fun to watch. It was definitely fun to watch. It's two teams that are probably going to meet in playoffs again. Met last year, might meet again this year. Who knows? There was a point in the game, I'm watching the Rams come down. I'm like, oh, they're going to take the lead in this game. There's no doubt about this, But then you look at the clock, it's like the Lions have too much time left. They're coming back with it as well. It was fun to watch. It was a great way to cap off a Sunday Night Football for week 1.
Yeah, I guess you didn't even have to complain about Collinsworth. A lot of people don't. But you know what? That was such an entertaining game that, even all his, hot air sometimes takes the air out of the broadcast. But I thought it was a good game. And I think it's funny. Sunday night, I think a lot of times the game is better than Monday night. So good one to talk about there. As we move on here on Lloyd Vance Insider Football on 102.9 The Game, Coast Sports Network, I'm here with Kevin Midgette, Angel Eye and Glass. All right, we give out awards every week here on my show. Game Ball winner. And this one, I'm going to say this is for you, Rich Q. It's Saquon Barkley from the Philadelphia Eagles. 24 rushes, 109 yards, 2 TDs, 2 receptions for 23 yards, 1 TD. Looking so happy, running behind a real offensive line. He's so happy to be in Philadelphia. So Saquon gets my game ball. Hopefully I didn't take yours from you. What do you think, Kevin?
Nah, definitely Saquon. You can't take anything away from him in that game. It was impressive to see that. And like I said, just the hard style in which he was running, he would not be denied out there. There's one I have to throw out there, and I'll refer to it as the Shut My Mouth, I Was Wrong award. That has to go to Anthony Richardson with the Colts.
Oh.
I didn't think he was going to bring much to the table. As bad as Deshaun Watson's throw was in that Cleveland Dallas game, he had the best throw I saw off his back foot, a dime to
Oh,
Pierce down
yes.
the sideline. I was impressed. I might have been wrong. I might have been wrong on this one.
Yeah, and Alec Pierce was getting deep for them. They have a lot of weapons too. You really didn't hear a lot about Jonathan Taylor in this one. I know we didn't talk about this game because there's so many to go through, but good win for the Houston Texans, and Stroud played well as well, getting the ball to all his weapons. But definitely a good game for Richardson. Another guy, if he stays healthy, he's going to be a good player. One other game ball I talked about it earlier. Boswell, 6 field goals. I think 4 of them were over 50 yards. He was just incredible scoring for his team. Now, you would hope the Steelers won't settle for so many field goals, but you got to tip your cap to him. Excuse me. My lackey is going to be. I almost gave it to Daniel Jones because I was thinking a lot about Rich Q watching these games, but I didn't do it. It's got to be Deshaun Watson. 24-45, 169, 2 interceptions, sacked 6 times. Looked so tentative out there. He was terrible.
Yeah, you really can't call Daniel Jones out. Daniel Jones is in the situation where it's like, we all know. Daniel Jones is what it is. He's a guy who's making a lot of money who's not very good. Deshaun Watson, on the other hand, he was supposed to be a guy that would save that Cleveland franchise. He had to sit out a year and everything else, all the persecution, and he just seems like he's not into it at all. He's just not into it. And that franchise is stuck with that contract. We talk about the Giants being stuck with the Daniel Jones contract. Cleveland, on the other hand, I mean, they're looking at 2032, 2033 before might be relevant again with a quarterback.
And it's all guaranteed money. So they may have to do an NBA type situation. I don't know where somebody says, all right, I'll take this big contract. I don't see that happening.
Ooh.
I think they're going to have to cut him and eat some of that money. But that's on Haslam. That's on Barry. He's the GM. They signed him. So, he's definitely gets my lackey for this week. Hopefully things will get better for Cleveland, but I don't see that changing. A lot of good performances, but yeah, that was our game ball winners and our lackey. Here on Lloyd Vance Insider Football, we're going to wrap things up. So we talk about this past week, Kevin, and we kind of start looking ahead. As we look into week 2, so a big thing for week 2 is if you win in week 2, you have a pretty good chance of making the playoffs. Last year, a lot of the teams that finished 2-0, I think there was 9 of them, and 6 of them made the playoffs. So if you get to 2-0, you got a pretty good chance of moving forward. Now, but every once in a while, though, you do see some teams you're like, oh, they started 2-0, right? And then next thing you know, you're like, oh, that was fool's gold. You couldn't believe. You're like, oh, okay. They were 2-0, really? So let's look at some of these games, and you can give your take on them. Buffalo is at Miami on Thursday night. Now, when I look at this one, I just look at the explosiveness of Miami. They're at home. The Bills' defense is not what it used to be. Yeah, they have a couple guys like Oliver and some of the guys in the secondary. But I think that I'm probably leaning towards Miami. I know it's early.
I think you have to go with Miami in that game right there. I'd tell Nate to cover his ears. He doesn't want to hear it, I know, with the Bills Mafia and everything. But I think Miami has to take that first one at home, just for the fact the shake up for the division for the rest of the year. You got to take care of home field.
Yeah, it's a big one. All right. This is probably a layup pick. The Raiders, who look terrible. We didn't get to this one. They lost to Baltimore West last night to the Chargers. Now they got to go to Baltimore. Baltimore's going to be angry. I think they're going to hang a lot of points on this Raiders team. Other than Max Crosby, I just don't see a lot with them. They did have a dumb fight, though, at the end of the game where a lot of the guys got ejected. So what are you thinking in terms of the Raiders going to Baltimore?
Well, I think that one fight on the field did nothing with the ones in the stands. I saw at least 4 different fights on social media that happened in that Raiders-Chargers game. I was like, good Lord, man. I'm paying how much money? I'm sitting here throwing fists at this game. That's how much I don't want to watch it. And I saw Raiders fans fighting each other. It's like, what are you doing? Yeah, the Ravens are going to jump all over the Raiders in this one. Especially you get an angry Ravens team coming off an extended bye as well with the extra days off. That's easy. The Ravens by double digits
All
probably in that
right.
game.
Yeah, we keep moving on. I'm looking at some of these games. The Bucks at the Lions. As I said earlier, it's going to be an entertaining game. Now, is Baker ready to face a pretty good defense? The Lions with Hutchinson, they're going to get after you and want to make mistakes. I'm leaning towards the Lions in this one. Obviously, I talked about the home team advantage this week.
Yeah, I like the Lions in the game, but I think as a Buccaneers fan, you have to pay attention. How competitive is my team in this game? If they can sit there and they hang with Detroit and they're on the road, you got to feel pretty good about that. Now, if they sit there and get motorboated through the whole game, it's like, all right, we're back to where we were. But if they can hang with Detroit, I think that's a good sign for that team going forward.
Yeah, and this next one I call "Are You for Real?" That the Saints are at the Dallas Cowboys, and both these teams won big this week. And when I look at it, though, Dallas plays so well in the Jerry Dome. The one thing we didn't talk about is they don't have much. Zeke is washed. Ezekiel Elliott, he was not moving that pile at all. So that's something you have to watch with Dallas. But I think CeeDee Lamb's going to have a big game in this one. The Saints secondary allows some big plays still. What do you think in terms of Saints going to Dallas?
Uh, I will say Dallas wins that game, and I would be pressed hard to say why New Orleans should win because we go back to the beginning of the show where I think Carolina is just that bad. I think New
Yeah,
Orleans is one of those that's a 12, 14 point loss right there for New Orleans.
and that's when the Dallas fans start thumping their chests.
Oh
This
yeah.
is our year. This is our year.
Hmm.
They always do that right before Thanksgiving when all the air lets out of the balloon. So so we'll see. We'll see how that turns out. But yeah, I agree with you. That's probably Dallas's game. Trying to look for yes, the Joe Burrow Bowl. So Cincinnati is going to Kansas City. We know that Patrick Mahomes quite often is outdueled by Joe Burrow. Bengals look terrible. I just got to go in recent history. I think that the Kansas City is going to run up and down the field on them. What do you think about this one?
I think the health of T. Higgins is going to be big in that game and give Joe Burrow another weapon in that one to see if he can play or not. I just don't think Cincinnati can run the ball. I think they have to sit there and throw the ball, and Kansas City can just pin their ears back and come at them. I don't see a situation because you know what it is we talked about. Cincinnati does notoriously start out slow.
Yeah.
If they have this game maybe in late November, it's a different story. But week 2, I think Kansas City's got them.
Yeah. And the last game we'll talk about quickly is the Falcons are at the Eagles, and this is a game, a rematch from years ago when the Eagles made their runs. They always had to play the Falcons in the playoffs, it seemed. The Falcons, the Steelers got after them pretty good, their defense. I think the Eagles are going to get a pass rush on Kirk Cousins, and he'll make some mistakes. I think the Eagles' offense has too many weapons. The Eagles win this one.
I agree. I think the Eagles win the game as well. I was shocked how much of a non-factor Drake London was in that game. They finally got Bijan going a little bit, but I mean, it was supposed to be, with Kirk Cousins, the offense was supposed to move a little better, new offensive coordinator. And I mean, give credit to Pittsburgh's defense. At the same time, I didn't see much out of Atlanta's offense.
Yeah, Atlanta has some work to do, and the Eagles' pass rush didn't do a lot, so that I think they're going to probably try to get after the Falcons. That should be an interesting game next Monday. So glad everybody could join us here on Lloyd Vance Insider Football, recapping Week 1 with Kevin Midgette here on 1029 The Gauge Coastal Sports Network. So glad everybody could join us. Angel, great job behind the glass as always, and we will have more games to talk about Week 2. Hopefully, I'll have a guest that shows, but we don't need that. We just do it ourselves. So
Right?
thanks for joining us, and we will talk to you for another week here on Lloyd Vance Insider Football.